Peter works as a forest ranger. As he was patrolling his area of the woods, he saw something big moving from afar. He immediately told himself to stay alert. There had been reports of predators in the area lately, but curiosity got the best of him. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like and share this video with your friends. Peter raised his binoculars to get a better look and then immediately turned pale. He saw a black bear come to view, but what terrified him was what he saw dangling from the bear's mouth. It was a human baby. But how did this happen? Peter had to get closer and make sure that the baby was still alive and fine. He carefully moved closer to the black bear's location. Peter was able to approach the bear from behind. Then the bear paused and put the baby down to the ground. Peter could feel his heart skip a beat. This could be his chance to grab the baby and return it to safety. But as he was about to make a move, the bear turned around. Peter froze. As a ranger, Peter knew that he should not make any sudden moves. But then something strange happened. Instead of lunging toward Peter, the bear grabbed the baby instead and ran away. Peter was not prepared for it. He tried to catch up, but the bear was too fast. Left with no choice, Peter called for backup. Peter asked over the radio for his other fellow rangers to prepare a rescue party for the baby. The problem is that they did not believe Peter. His fellow rangers told him he was probably just seeing things. After all, why would a black bear and a human baby be together? Desperate for help, Peter ended up calling the police. Fortunately, the police took him seriously. The first officers arrived on the scene in just a few minutes. They informed Peter that more backups will arrive soon. But then, Peter's boss showed up and asked if he could talk to the cops for a while in his office. When the cops came out, they immediately went to the woods. The weird thing was that they seemed to be angry at Peter. All the cops came back in less than an hour. Peter was surprised to see them right away. He was sure they were not able to search the entire woods for that long. One of the officers then asked Peter's boss if they could all talk in his office. The officer in charge then told him that Peter's call had wasted a lot of resources and manpower for nothing. They could not find any bears in the woods. They could take him to prison for that, but given the circumstances, they will let him go with a warning. Peter was confused. What circumstances? Peter told everyone that he was not making the story up, but nobody took him seriously. When the cops left, Peter's boss asked him and the other rangers to stay. Peter told his boss that everybody should be out there looking for the baby. Peter's boss told him in a calm voice that he has made the decision to fire Peter. He believed that Peter was starting to see things due to a traumatic event in his life. This may get in the way of his job as a ranger. This was the best thing to do so that he would not get into trouble like the one he caused today. You see, Peter had just lost his baby recently. His wife had a miscarriage. They believed the trauma of losing his baby was still fresh, and that he imagined the bear carrying his baby. Peter's boss and colleagues tried to convince Peter to go to therapy. But Peter argued that this was not the case. He could not believe that his colleagues would see him that way, but he could see that they were not willing to change their minds. He stormed out of the office and went home to cool down. Peter was determined to clear his name, and to do that, he had to find out the truth. His wife tried to stop him, reminding him that he was not allowed to go into the woods anymore. But her attempts to hold him back fell on deaf ears. Peter headed out to the forest first thing in the morning. Peter knew nobody would be patrolling the forest edge. He could get in without anybody spotting him. But he knew he could not go on this mission alone. So he asked his best friend, Jacob, for help. Jacob was a fellow ranger who happened to be off duty when Peter got fired. Peter explained the whole thing to him. Peter told Jacob that he had to go back to the woods to rescue the baby. Jacob was skeptical about it. He could lose his job over this. When he refused to come, Peter broke down in tears. Jacob was surprised. He had never seen Peter like this. It was then that he decided to accompany Peter. Jacob had to watch over his friend. In case what their boss and colleagues say is true, Peter is in no state to go wandering in the woods all by himself. As the two headed into the forest, Peter kept rambling on and on about the bear and the baby. Jacob could not help but think that Peter was going crazy, but something refrained him from contacting any of his fellow rangers for help. When they finally reached the area where Peter first saw the bear and the baby, Jacob took a good look around. There were tracks on the ground, and these were bigger tracks than usual. There was no doubt that these tracks belonged to a black bear. Peter and Jacob started to follow the tracks. They heard a loud roar. Jacob and Peter froze. The sound indicated that it came from a close distance. There was no doubt about it. They were in the black bear's territory, and the bear had picked up their scent. Jacob told Peter it was best if they asked for backup from the other rangers on duty. Peter refused. They had to make sure first that the baby was there. Otherwise, they will still think less of him. But Jacob was fearing for his life. Peter convinced Jacob that it would be best if they stuck together. They did not have any official gear with them, so they did not have anything to sedate the bear. Jacob reluctantly agreed. Peter and Jacob started to head slowly and carefully toward the sound. It did not take long for them to spot a cave from the distance. But from where they were hidden, they could not see any sign of a baby with the bear. Jacob tried to convince Peter that they should go back and report it to the ranger's office. Peter stubbornly stayed put. He wanted to make sure that the baby was there. Jacob was starting to believe that Peter was delusional. Then they heard crying from the cave. There was no doubt about it. It was a baby's cry coming from that cave. Peter and Jacob looked at each other. They knew now that they had no choice. It was their job to rescue that baby now. But then Jacob made a noise when he moved. The bear's head popped out of the cave, and he spots Jacob. Peter whispers to him not to move. But fear took over Jacob, and he starts to back away. The bear reacts and starts to charge toward Jacob. Jacob had no choice but to run away as fast as he can. This was a life-threatening situation, and he had to look after himself now. He quickly climbed up a tree. The bear tried to grab Jacob, but he was able to get to a distance where he was out of reach. Peter headed toward the bear cave. This was the only chance he could get to rescue the baby. He knew Jacob was a skilled ranger and that he could be fine. Then he heard Jacob screaming that the bear was headed back. Peter had no time to waste. He rushed into the cave. He quickly fishes out his phone from his pocket to use as a flashlight. That's when he finally sees the baby. It looks unharmed at first glance. Peter is relieved and proud of himself for not giving up. But then he realizes that he must get out of there as soon as possible. The bear could be back anytime soon. But it was too late. Peter hears noises from outside the cave. The bear had returned. He quickly turned off the light on his phone. He could hear the bear walking around the cave in the darkness. He seems upset as he realizes the baby is gone. Then the worst thing happened in the situation. The baby suddenly started to cry in Peter's arms. Peter tried to calm down the baby, but it was too late. Peter realized that there was no use hiding now. He turned on the light and sees that the bear was staring at him. Peter backs away slowly until he realized he had nowhere else to go. Then the bear unexpectedly fell forward. Peter jumped out of the way and saw a couple of sedation darts all over the bear's back. Rangers started to go into the cave to rescue Peter and the baby. It turned out that Jacob called them for backup while he was up on the tree, and everyone arrived just in time. Peter, Jacob, and the baby were escorted by the Rangers to their head office. Peter got his apologies from everybody and was offered his job back. They then called the police and took the baby to the nearest hospital. The police could not believe that Peter was saying the truth all along. They still had no idea where the baby came from. There were no reports of a missing child lately. The police had the baby go through a full checkup at the hospital. Peter refused to let the baby out of his sight until the baby was returned home safely. The police gave him clearance to stay with the baby. After a thorough inspection, the baby was declared healthy. Peter's wife arrived at the hospital urging him to take a rest since he has been awake for more than 24 hours now. Then, Peter got a call from the police captain. He said they finally solved the mystery. The parents of the baby were found near the woods, but they both died in a fatal car crash. The bear must have gotten the baby from the scene. The parents seemed to have no family left, so nobody called in that they were missing. The baby was an orphan. Peter and his wife looked at each other. They knew what they wanted at that moment, and that was to adopt that baby. Peter and his wife have never been happier in their lives. Peter continued his job as a ranger, and later his son became a ranger as well.